Hello, this is Christian Larsen, Windgate Research Curator at the Museum of Arts and Design, joined with Elissa, Auther, Chief Curator of the museum, and we're here to discuss what you can do with craft. So I pose that question to you, Elissa. What can you do with craft?
Hi, Christian. I guess my short answer is, what can't you do with craft? And to illustrate this point, in this gallery I brought together a group of objects all made within the recent past by artists working in a variety of ways with glass, fiber, and ceramics. And for the artists gathered here, craft can be a material, a technique, a history, a cultural resource, or all of these things at the same time. And there's a wide range of approaches, contexts, and meanings produced here that reflect a contemporary art world in which artists move much more freely across what was once a strict divide between what counted as art with a capital A and what was excluded as mere craft.
Artists who take on craft materials and techniques, say for example Amber Cohen, who's working in glass, but she does it in such a conceptual way and in such a painstaking, rich way. It's kind of a microcosm all in its own, this piece. Could you tell us more about Amber's work?
Sure. In Amber Cohen's work, Dance of the Pacific Coast Highway at Sunset, she's repurposed pieces of antique pressed glass from defunct factories combined with her own handmade elements. So here she's repurposing historic craft forms and traditions to create a utopian fantasy scene that's populated by swans, ballerinas, and this very theatrical, stage-like surround of flowers. The work is about the history of glass objects made for the domestic sphere. It's about the decorative excesses of glass and even the construction of femininity through its associations to all things pink and ornamental.
This is a very interesting aspect of this installation, which is the appropriation of historical materials, like actual historical artifacts, whether it's old factory glass or an old quilt.
So along that line, there's an interesting comparison to be made between Sanford Bigger's Dagu and Sinai Hattori's Romanesque cherry blossoms regarding craft as a cultural resource, or the recycling of historic craft forms into another work of art. So both of these artists incorporate antique patchwork into their works, and they're drawing on history and craft as traditions to mine and then also expand in new directions. For Biggers, found quilt material is a ground for painting, and in his work, the abstract patterning of the quilt that you see here connects to his interest in coded communications in African American art history. And his work literally incorporates patchwork, and his painted imagery adds something new to the more recent history of the narrative quilt. For Hattori, the kimono is a ground for a composition that combines Western ornament of the Byzantine period and the Eastern motif of the cherry blossom. This is a work that deflates all sorts of hierarchies operating in Western art history. First of all, the kimono is a wearable art form, and like many works in this genre, abstract and landscape imagery are brought together with neither dominating the other.
One of the interesting things about not only the Biggers and the Hattori, but everything in this contemporary section is how extremely visually complex and patterned. There's a decorative element to each of these that pulls the viewer in and commands your attention, makes you look at the way that it's made and the complexity of its patterning.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a theme that I'm very interested in, because in the history of art, the term decorative has been used to dismiss and exclude works in craft media as a lesser form of art. But in this gallery, the decorative really isn't a dirty word. It's a conscious use of material and style that's been reappropriated to highlight traditions, identities, ways of making, and experiences that have been sidelined by canonical art history.